give hardware a rest this particular week, and we're looking at software. In particular, we're looking at vinyl and a few books, mostly vinyl. Now, I know a few of you out there do like to hear more about what's going on in terms of vinyl and CDs, in terms of news and reviews and all that kind of jazz. Well, this is for you folks. This one is for you. But it's also for me because I want to catch up. A lot of this stuff is already written down and I just need to turn it into a video. But you know, time, hey, you know all about that, don't you? So I need to catch up. So what I'm going to do with Christmas coming, Christmas is approaching pretty darn fast as I make this video. Well, I thought I would use this time to do that catch up. So I will be doing some hardware reviews in between now and Christmas. And I will also be looking at vinyl and CDs as well, and a few books. So yeah, I think now's the time to do a little bit of catching up. Also, you know, Christmas, hey, Christmas. So you've got all of those Christmas hints that you'd like to float into the general direction of your loved ones or friends or generous partners, whoever they may be. And also, in addition, when Christmas does appear, you may have a few spare pennies, possibly, or you may even have some generous festive donations. Who can tell? Who can tell what Father Christmas will bestow upon your kind soul? It's all rather exciting, isn't it? So with that in mind, I'm going to squeeze as much as possible into this review. This is what I normally do, isn't it? I squeeze as much as possible. Each review is about 4 hours long. This one probably will be no different, but I'm going to try and squeeze as many vinyl discs and books into this video as possible. So you're going to see vinyl news, which will be dripping with opinion, so maybe vinyl previews might be more accurate. There will be actual vinyl reviews, longer form, in amongst the previews, so maybe 4 or so of those. Those particular reviews will also have some mastering information attached if you need that info. And as I keep saying, there will be a little bit of book information. I've got 3 book reviews for you, and hopefully that'll just mix things up a bit, add to the variety, and hopefully we'll all have a fun time. So let's get stuck in, shall we? And we'll begin with some vinyl news, previews, whatever. We'll begin with the Bill Evans Trio. This one is from a label called Craft, and it's called On a Friday Evening. And this one's a bit special because it's previously unreleased. On a Friday Evening is a double album gatefold set, mastered at RTI and transferred from the original master tapes from a live recording from the 20th of June 1975. At Oil Can Harry's in Vancouver. Now this might be a double album, but it spans 8 tracks, 8 long tracks, and features Eddie Gomez on bass and Elias Zygmunt on drums, and was captured for Canadian radio via the host Gary Barkley, who served as the evening's announcer on his popular CHQM Jazz show. As such, this is a well-recorded set. Next up, we're looking at a bit of, I don't know, neoclassicalism, shall we say, from a chap named Dustin O'Halloran. Speaking of piano, O'Halloran's new neoclassical double album gatefold is called Silfor, and it's on Deutsche Grammophon, and it's the man's debut for the label. And it's a beautifully melodic album. It was actually recorded during a lockdown, and we're all familiar with them, aren't we? This one was recorded in Iceland. This one features occasional collaborations with the Siggy String Quartet, and that adds emotional texture. The next artist is called Hiatus Coyote, I think that's how you pronounce it, and I'm going to spell it down below just so you can see, because it's not spelled as you might think. The album is called Mood Valiant, and it's from the Ninja Tune label in the UK. And this is yet another gatefold release. This is an Australian neo-soul jazz quartet, perhaps, which focuses on the vocalist Nye Palm, the beats and angular rhythms circle her voice in a cut-up, fractured fashion that feels fresh, airy, and inventive. Next up, we're looking at the Snake Farm label and a duo of reissues from the rock band 38 Special. The two reissues from the rock veterans include Wild-Eyed Southern Boys from 1981 and Special Forces from 1982. They feature good time, catchy southern rock flavours, mixing roots with commercial tones, particularly on the album Special Forces. Next up is an album by a lady by the name of Sarah Neufeld, and what I'm going to do is give you her Bandcamp address. In fact, I'll put lots of contacts in the description, so if you're wondering how do I get these things, look down below and I'll put as many contacts as possible down there. Sometime member of the Bell Orchestra and Arcade Fire, Neufeld has a new album out called Detritus. This outing sees the violin-sparked ambience span spacious soundscapes and accompany playful beats. Next up, we have two from the UK record label called K-Scope. First up, there's an album by Clone with a K, of course, and yet another gatefold release. My goodness, they're popular this month. This one is called A Live, and this is a live double album collection from 2016 and 2019. There's also White Moth, Black Butterfly, and they have a new release out too. Well, pop pickers, this one is called The Cost of Dreaming, and this is gloss pop. Breathy vocals from Jordan Turner, undercut by Don Tompkins from Tesseract, if you recall that particular name, who sound terribly, terribly serious, earnest, and maybe just a bit overwrought. Let me tell you about a relatively new series of vinyl albums, very nicely presented they are as well, called the Montreux Years. And these are live recordings from, surprise, surprise, the Montreux Jazz Festival, and they've been transferred to vinyl. As they say, they look very nice indeed, and they sound rather nice too. Let's talk about the first two releases I have here. There'll be more to follow in other videos. So, from the Claude Nobbs collections, and Claude is the founder and general manager of the Montreux Jazz Festival, these albums are presented as, yes, you guessed it, double album gatefolds. So first up, we have Nina Simone. The Montreux Nina Simone release covers concerts from 1968 to 1990. The more recent stuff is okay, and aging Simone struggles a tad perhaps, but the earlier recordings are wonderful in their angularity. And then there's Etta James. And James also has a set covering 5 concerts from 1977 to 1993. Her varying vocal shades are always entertaining. Next up, we're looking at the Grateful Dead and the 50th anniversary of their 1971 live release, Skull and Roses. This beautiful edition feels rather substantial and hefty in the hand, while the music itself has been remastered. And we're looking at yet another anniversary, but this time it's the 30th from a UK band called Breathless. Between Happiness and Heartache is the album's name, and it's been drawn from the original masters and arrives with a bonus track called Everything I See via download. The older they got, the more I heard Echo and the Bunnymen and The Cure in the work of the band Breathless, with Dominic Appleton tired of explaining himself, giving it another go. It's an attractive and heady mix. Next up, we're looking at an album released by two chaps, Dave Scher and Jimmy Hay, and they produced an LP called Spirit stereo frequency. I will give a Bandcamp link below so you can check that out. This one combines melodic rock with a sense of dreamy, hippie psychedelia with a West Coast flavour. This is music to lose yourself within. Next up, we're looking at a release from the ambient electronica outfit Seafeel. And again, I'll give a Bandcamp link below. This one compiles 2 non-album EPs that Seafeel recorded for the Warp label in 1994. The first, Stir Through, and the second, Fractured Stroke Tide. Plus a couple of rare mixes to boot. Combining electronic dub with avant melodies and tones, this collection features prime cut electronica, and it's marvellously meaty. Now if you're saying, he's not showing the vinyl, where is the vinyl? Well, I'm trying to keep this quick, I'm trying to keep it snappy, so I'm not really dragging the video down by showing you vinyl, but look, I'll show you a few. So here's the Seafeel release, minimalist, but very nice. Looks a little bit like a chemistry O-level exam paper, but very nice nevertheless. Here's the Montreux Jazz Festival collection from Nina Simone. Nina Simone, one of the most dangerous women who ever walked God's earth. That's Nina. Here's the Breathless album on the Tenor Vossa label. Again, lovely stuff. But let's get back to the info, shall we? And a band called Vertale. It's a vowel-heavy band name, this one. So, Vertale's new release, paradigm shifting, juggles beat-ridden jazz with electronica twizzles across a continuous mix tape. It combines cool, meditative beats with more complex jazz layers, I would say. Next up, we're looking at Aretha Franklin with Aretha. This is a 2 LP gatefold compilation ranging from 1956 to 2015 and ranges over 20 tracks. The vinyl edition is more really of a highlights package because I would say the main package is the CD version, which is more of a it's more of a box set really, 4 CD box set spanning 81 tracks, I think. Nevertheless, the essentials are all here. Respect, Chain of Fools, I Never Loved a Man the Way I Love You, and more. From the band O Susanna, we're looking at a solo work from Susie Ungelider. I apologise if I've got that name wrong. Susie Ungelider? I think it's Susie Ungelider. Correct me if I'm wrong, folks. And this album is called My Name Is, which has nothing to do with Eminem, I'm assured. This one covers alt country and uses a simple, clear delivery that, well, reminds me a little bit of a sort of diluted Stevie Nicks. This one is expressive and direct. Now, if you're looking for a House Martins kind of ethic, then you may want to look at this album from Warren Dunes. And yes, it does offer a sort of House Martins ethic to music. The pop rock trio Warren Dunes is offering the album Get Well Soon. It's upbeat, smiley, and happy-go-something. Energetic, but also musing. And there's lots of invention in there, and it's definitely worth a listen. And finally, in this particular section, we have a couple of releases from the UK outfit Demon and a couple of part 2s. The first part 2 is a compilation from Gary Crowley called Lost 80s Volume 2. Its 2 discs include tracks by the Hinsons, Ellen Foley, Colorbox, the B-52s, and Pressure Point. This is a sprawling collection of 7-inch cuts, dance mixes, and 12-inch rarities. The next part 2 is via Eddie Pillar, the Mod Revival Part 2 to be specific. This is a double disc collection on coloured vinyl and includes tracks by The Moment, The Inmates, The Fixations, and The Gents. Lots of modish goodies here. Right, end of part 1, kind of. Let's go on to some vinyl reviews next up. if you're into Prince, well, you might want to have a look at this album via Rhino. It's from the band The Time, and it's an album called The Time. Packed full of talent that would go on to greater things, this was the first side project backed by Prince. It was released in 1981, and it has his fingerprints all over it. Rumours say that Prince songwrote, sang, and played on most of the LP, although the credits don't really back that up. Even so, Jamie Starr, which was a Prince pseudonym, is there as engineer and mixer. This is a supremely melodic outing, full of hooks and head-nodding funk beats, infused by the spirit of the Purple One himself. This is a double album, but it only features 6 tracks, and yet it has wonderful, rather gorgeous synth funk outings. I would say, in fact, that the tracks here are on par with Prince's own solo works of the time. Now, the original album was mastered by one Bernie Grundman, and if you know your mastering engineers, you know he is the man. The remastering has been finalised by Bill Inglot and Dan Hirsch at D2 Mastering. D2 Mastering, whose website has that motto, analogue or death. So expectations were high for this one. And it doesn't disappoint. In fact, I find it completely fascinating. This remaster offers very low noise indeed, which allows you to push up the volume to extract as much detail as possible. So well done, D2 Mastering. Now, what intrigues me about this album on a techie level is how the room where the recording has been done, how the room has been mic'd up in the first place. At least that's the effect I'm hearing. There's a real tonal balance here, an extreme evenness in the presentation. You really feel that everyone, and I mean everyone, vocalists and instrumentalists, are getting a real, well, a fair crack at this recording. So what I mean by that is that everyone is heard. No one is left behind. And that's unusual, shall we say. Unusual because the lead vocal can sometimes sound a little bit distant because the lead vocal is just one of a pack of people. So as with most records, the lead vocal is pushed just a little bit towards the listener. You do get that here. You sort of hear the lead vocal as one of a crowd, which is different. So, if anything, there's your downside to this setup. Nevertheless, this LP is a real ensemble piece that gives the songs a full, rich and expansive feel. Pop fans will love this album to bits. Prince fans, on the other hand, will, well, they will see it as absolutely essential. Next up, we're looking at Eric Clapton, and as seems to be the pattern at the moment, this one is also self-titled. It's called Eric Clapton. Now, Clapton enjoyed his time touring with Delaney and Bonnie, and with them he found himself able to relax. He could step off the stressy star-like treadmill, kick back, relax and just play the music he loved, which is why he involved the pair in making this release. Delaney and Bonnie are all over the song credits on this 1970 LP, as are most of Delaney and Bonnie's backing band. The album itself is packed with country, gospel and R&B, with a smattering of blues. On this release, Clapton did what he would increasingly do as time moved on. He would frustrate his fans. By that I mean he would contain himself. He would restrict the flashy guitar side of his personality, that part of him which shot him to fame in the first place. That part, as we know, was lauded by many. So was this LP a reaction then to the Clapton is God thing? It seems so from the output on this album. So despite Clapton putting a lid on Clapton, there is still much to admire here. So for example, there's the rather nice Let It Rain from Bramlett and Clapton, and also J.J. Cale's After Midnight. In terms of mastering, well, there's that signature, slightly cotton wool infused, overarching sound across the album as a whole. You get that slight 70s damping effect, which is often described as the 1970s glow. It's comforting, it's a cuddly sound, and it's very much of its time. Which doesn't mean that detail and insight is neglected, not at all. There's plenty of that here. Harmony backing vocals sound emotional and textured, while slightly shy secondary percussion effects such as the lonely tambourine are easily picked out by the ear. There's plenty of width, there's plenty of depth around the soundstage here. And again, iconically for the time, there's rather soft drums and rolled off brass effects. As a period piece, it offers a goodly blend of information and atmosphere. Next up, we're moving a little bit closer to the present, and we're looking at the band Madness, which has an album, Presents the Rise and Fall. This album saw a change in the band, or rather, a change in how the band wanted to approach music and their songwriting within. There was both a whimsy and a nostalgia in this project, but also a definite seriousness. The sort of seriousness that you wouldn't necessarily associate with the Nutty Boys from Camden. So take the title track, which reflects on times past, places of one's youth revisited. It's also reflective of changing times and the divisive politics of living in the UK at that time. For example, the lead singer Suggs had visited Liverpool just after the riots had completely devastated parts of the city. I know because I was there at the time. This was 1982. I was 18 years old. So parts of this album resonates with me personally. Blue Skinned Beast, meanwhile, takes a similarly serious look at the wider society in Britain by focusing on the Falklands War and the body bags emerging from the same. There is, in short, a real maturation in the band's songwriting. This is a suite of songs about people and places they've lived and worked and played and died in and for. This is the album where the hit single Our House lived, the epitome of nostalgic reflection and pop perfection. In broad terms, I quite liked the mastering. The noise is relatively low, the soundstage is relatively wide, there's a good discipline across the frequency range, and also the music is full of mid-range detail. There is a slight compressive feel across the music. I'm sure this is a little bit of emphasis around the mid-range, done in an effort to raise the detail for your delectation. So there's a touch of sibilance here and there on Tomorrow's Just Another Day as one example. Don't get me wrong, the compression is not a problem, but it's there. And finally, in this review section, we're looking at the reissue of Everything Picture from the band Ultrasound. This is a deluxe edition of a big, bold, storming, sprawling 1999 glam rock prog debut. In fact, the mixed media box set maintains the flavour of the music itself. The reissue features Everything Picture, the original double album, but that's not all. There's an extra 2 slabs of vinyl in the packaging featuring a variety of B-sides and singles. There's also a CD that features both live and session tracks. Finally, you also get a 26-page booklet and a poster. Now, if you trot over to OLI Records website store, you can also receive a signed 10 by 8 inch print of the band, taken during the original album campaign. This is an exclusive edition only available from the site. Now, I found it funny that the band were conscious of their audience at the time of the album's release. A post-Britpop audience, mind you. Scary people for sure. The band said, and I quote, "We were aware that the post-Britpop presence of the early millennium might not get it." That was vocalist Andrew Tiny Wood. Many did, and many more grew and developed with it as it grew and developed a life of its own. As for the mastering, well, if I was being greedy, I would have liked to have seen a slightly more open soundstage and maybe a slightly more lowering of the noise floor, but I am being terribly picky here, so As it is, the presentation remains excellent with a good level of both transparency and clarity. Detailed translation, such as the Plucking of the bass guitar strings was impressive, while some of the lead guitar work was atmospheric indeed in terms of the dynamic reach. Magnificent, grand and imposing music with pomp and majesty all of its own in a lovely package. So that's the vinyl reviews for now. Let's look at a few books. I've got 3 for you. First up, we're looking at a book devoted to Captain Beefheart called Beefheart Through the Eyes of Magic by the author John Drumbo French. This is a whopping great book of 864 pages and costs £25, although I'm sure you can see discounts here and there. This Beefheart book is an expanded reprint of a 10-year-old publication. It's a book that's less a biography than, well, an analyst's report on the relationship between Beefheart and the author, with a supporting cast of thousands. Packed with sometimes rambling information within its closely printed text, almost 100 pages are devoted to a remarkably detailed track-by-track analysis of Beefheart's albums, plus CD outtakes releases. That's almost a book in itself. The meat of this tome reflects on the exploitation, manipulation and bullying from the good captain, the people caught in the middle, and the great music this negativity produced. A mix of creation and destruction then. Myths are exploded here, truths unveiled. So French produces a narrative. He did this, she did that, and then he reaches into the story and he contacts the people who were involved and he says, give me your take, give me your perspective on what happened here. And then you'll get a bold, quoted Q&A interview of that person's perspective of any one particular event. So there's a here's what happened and here's the proof aspect of this design. And I absolutely loved that aspect of the design. Of course, this is Beefheart, so Frank Zappa fans also need this book. So if you've ever wondered why Zappa man Ray Collins left the band, it's in the book. In short, possibly the best Beefheart book ever written. Next, we're looking at the Orb's Alex Patterson and a book called Babylon and Ting. This is an omnibus published book. You can get it for around £17, 341 pages, spans the entire tome, and it's been written by Chris Needs in conjunction with Alex Patterson himself. So Babylon and Ting covers the history of Alex Patterson's legendary ambient dub outfit. We hear tales of him being bullied at school, his time as a punk, how he proposed to his girlfriend with a donut ring. Smooth, Alex. Very smooth. And becoming a roadie for the band Killing Joke, the classic Adventures Beyond the Underworld debut Orb LP, the KLF Connection, and more. Both Adventures and the later UF Orb were classics, and deservedly so, but Pomp Fritz, and especially Orbis Terrarum, exhibited Patterson's genius. Oxbow Lakes, pure perfection, as Patterson subverted neoclassicism before the genre even got off the ground. Patterson is a genius, make no mistake. No surprise then that he was slated for both the Same Again Please fans, the media, and even his own record label. Patterson the genius fled to a place deep inside his head and was never seen again. Patterson remains upset. It's there in the book. A book in desperate need of an index, by the way. Nice discography though. And finally, for British radio fans, the remarkable tale of Radio 1 from Robert Sellers. This book is also from Omnibus, spans 337 pages, and is priced around £20. And this one is a bit of a curate's egg, I would say. The author skims and he crams. The book's subtitle is called The History of the Nation's Favourite Station, 1967 to 1995. But if this book was the history, then surely it would be 3 times the size. At 300 and something pages, something's gotta give. Creating a real history would have meant digging into fascinating corners. For example, let's pick one at random, shall we? Earl Grey Whistle tests Mark Ellen's time on the station, for example. His take on life as a stand-in for John Peel and Kid Jensen would have been interesting indeed. Also, despite the so-called first-hand interview boast, there's not really enough depth, not enough narrative. It's a book of bits, a casual fireside chat with too much reliance on cut and paste interviews. And I can't see any new quotes from Annie Nightingale, Liz Kershaw, or Janice Long, for example. And I'll leave you to draw your own conclusions on that one. There's also no author's notes explaining why. The book feels rushed. Live Aid coverage flies by in a few pages. New insights are few and far between. This book is passable. Kinda. So let's finish with another slice of vinyl news, and then you can go and put the kettle on. And we'll start with the UK label Demon, and we'll start with Frank Black, who, in this particular incarnation, was still Black Francis, lead singer for the rock band The Pixies, and live at the Utah Saloon on this pressing, a concert from San Francisco on the 9th of October 2007. This double red vinyl pressing, previously only available on the limited edition USB stick, covers songs from Black Francis and also Frank Black and the Pixies catalogue. But that's not all from Demon. We're also looking at a big box set from the M People called Renaissance. This features a signed copy portrait by Mike Pickering, Paul Hurd and Shovel. All of the band's albums are here with their original sleeve artwork and over different coloured vinyl, and they include Northern Soul, Elegant Slumming, Bizarre Fruit and Fresco, plus an exclusive 12-inch remixed by Sasha and featuring Sunday and How Can I Love You More, available commercially on 12-inch for the first time. Dub fans will be happy to see a slice of King Tubby, Majestic Dub from 1983 specifically. This is the first vinyl reissue of this 10-track dub set. Produced by Bunny Striker Lee, it was mixed by Lloyd James, aka Prince Jammy, at King Tubby's in 1980 and features Sly and Robbie, Santa Davis, Earl, Chinna Smith and more. Also look out for the best of the Psychedelic Furs, over 11 tracks with new liner notes, the Average White Band's Cover to Cover, Soul to Soul, a best of compilation, plus there's a new entry on this disc, the Isley Brothers' Harvest to the World. This is the Average White Band's 2017 recording, which appears on vinyl for the first time. Next, well, Star Wars, that's what's next. This one is from the label Varis Saraband, and it's the Empire Strikes Back soundtrack by John Williams, a formerly long out of print 1980 issue. This reissue is complete with rather wonderful sleeve art. It's presented in a gatefold and pressed on imperial grey marble, and it's limited to 1,500 copies. And I'm being neglectful, aren't you? I'm not showing you the goodies. Okay, so here's Madness, Rise and Fall. This is a gatefold. See if you can, don't want to get too much glare on there. Hopefully you can see some of it. Here's the Times self-titled album. Here's a slice of King Tubby and Black Francis at the Hotel at the Hotel Utah. But back to another anniversary. This is the 30th anniversary of an album by Deacon Blue, and this one is on yellow vinyl. This is the pop rockers' Fellow Hoodlums album, which spawned 3 charting singles and offered a lofty array of pop with a slight soul infusion and often deeply emotional lyrics to boot. Next we have Ma Fleur, which is a reissue of a 2007 original release from the Cinematic Orchestra via Ninja Tune. This is on a limited edition clear vinyl and includes 3 bonus tracks and 4 art cards. It's a sort of soundtrack of Sweets to an Invisible Film, a dramatic production featuring vocals via Fontella bass, Lou Rhodes and Patrick Watson, but I found it a bit heavy-handed and rather self-indulgent. 2 releases now from the German audiophile label Bear Family. First up is by a band called Lucifer, and the Hellions, called Helena Barn Live. It includes a 16-page booklet and 24-track CD, all in one package. This is the rock and roll band's first live release to celebrate their 25th anniversary. Yet another anniversary. Stepping back in time now, and we're looking at a label compilation 10-inch called Blue Moon Keep On Shining, the labels in question being Blue Moon and Bella. These tracks are taken from those labels' catalogues, and they include 12 pure rockabilly tracks from the likes of the Savoys, Chuck Royal and the Sharpsters, and Toby and Ray. Next up we have a release from Denmark, a man called Michael Plug, I hope that's right. This was created during yet another lockdown. So it's a lockdown, everyone's shut indoors, and our Michael would go to the rear of his house and he would sit on the balcony with his guitar and he would serenade everybody in the area. So they would all open their doors and windows and they'd listen to Michael giving them a bit of a show, which I thought was rather nice. So what he did, he put all of that on an album. It's called Balcony Lullabies, and it's a very nice album indeed. Next we have 2 new outings on Chrysalis from Big Country, the classic pop rockers. Firstly, an album called The Buffalo Skinners from 1993 on double vinyl with a gatefold that features stripped back to basics pop rock from the band, a sort of please lovers to the American market that never really took off, but fans will still appreciate. These are direct and well-crafted songs. Also look out for a release called Without a Safety Net, the complete Glasgow Barrowlands 1993 concert in both acoustic and electric forms, newly remastered and set in a multi-fold out gatefold. And yet another anniversary. This one is the 40th anniversary. It's a Quincy Jones release called The Dude from 1981, originally published on A&M. It blends Latin, soul, jazz and more in a smoothly produced whole, from I No Corrida, written by Chaz Jankel of Ian Jury and the Blockheads, to the soul ballad of Just Once. Massively successful at the time, this one is slick and cuddly. Next up we have a release from one Dr. Robert Blackman, who was a chiropractor. Oh yes. But he also produced 5 disco funk tracks between 1983 and 1985 on the Riverwinds imprint, featuring diverse and local musical talents. It's crazily wonderful. 2 from Spain now and the label Vampy Soul, including R&B Hip Shakers Volume 5, Rocks in Your Head, featuring early soul from the King and Federal Vaults. So you're looking at cracking songs from Roy Estrada, Albert King, the 5 Royals and more. There's also a release from Helena Morales, and I will put the name of that album below because I will have trouble saying it. And Helena was once included in the top 100 world's guitar players by Guitar Player magazine. She is one mean guitar player. This Brazilian folk outing produces sparkling acoustic work. Guitar-wise, this old lady, she'll kick your butt. Next up is KDAP's Influences. This is Kevin Drew's 8-track solo instrumental electronic project. It's a thoughtful musing series of considered beats for walking meditation. Next we have Lojo's Trans de Papier, if I've pronounced that correctly, which normally I haven't, which includes the gravelly voice of Dennis Payan, harmonies from the Need El Murid Sisters, again, probably got that wrong, apologies, violin and bass and others. French folk, well, I'm not really sure, it's certainly different. Both Tony Allen and, would you believe, Robert Wyatt guest on this one. Finally, we have the hidden soul of the fjords. This one is described as Norwegian elemental sonic soundscape of ambience and vocal plus organic solos. This one mixes the neoclassical and electronica and even found sounds with a dash of choral expanded Enya-esque vocals. This is an engrossing production. And that's that. Lots of variety, lots of bits and pieces. Hope you liked it. Would you like some more? I've got more to offer. I need to catch up, so I'll probably give it to you whether you want it or not. Nevertheless, I hope there was something in there to tickle your fancy and to tickle your wallet. I'll be back next week, probably with something more hi-fi related. We'll get to more of these releases a little bit nearer Christmas time. Thank you very much for staying to the end of this video, and if you could do me a favor and click on the subscribe and like buttons, they're somewhere there. I'm sure you can find them. Give them a click if you would, please. I'd much appreciate it. Also, check out the description. There'll be a host of chapter headings down there so you can bounce between all of the features in this video, and there's a host of links to my social media platforms, my Facebook group, which you're welcome to join, my website, where there's a whole host of editorial you won't find on this particular channel, and if you can support me on Patreon, which keeps this thing going. Without Patreon, this channel dies a death, folks. So if I can ask you to help me out with supporting me on Patreon, keeps it going, as I say, so thank you in advance if you can. I'll be back next week, as I say, probably with something a little bit more hi-fi orientated. Hope you can join me, would love to have your support. Until then, bye-bye for now.